Have you ever wondered what a person actually says in the final minutes of their life? No, it's not some dramatic movie. Quote, not a touching monologue from a novel. These are real words. Simple, harsh, frighteningly honest. According to observations by hospice and palliative care specialists, over 90% of elderly people on the brink of death say the same three words, not because of pain, not because of fear of dying, but because it's too late to change anything. These words are like a final attempt to acknowledge what they've stayed silent about their whole life. And before we reveal them, you need to understand why they're so terrifying. You believed you were in control of your life, that age is just a number, that you could ignore the warning signs, that if something did happen, you'd handle it. You believed the best was still ahead, but the truth is, only those who aren't afraid to look back can truly look forward. And when there's nothing left to look back on, all that's left is regret. We've heard hundreds of stories, but there's one that still haunts us. A 72-year-old man. Strong, charismatic, a lifelong role model for his family, never complained. He laughed off words like EKG, diagnosis, prevention. And then one morning, he collapsed in the bathroom, unable to get up, too weak to call for help. He lay there for almost 2 hours before his grandson found him. Stroke, partial paralysis. 2 weeks later, he wasn't joking anymore. A month later, he couldn't speak. 3 months later, he was in a nursing home. Not because his family didn't love him, but because he once chose silence. You think this is an exception? It's not. It's statistics. The most dangerous lie is the one you tell yourself every day. It's nothing serious, just a bit of back pain. Everyone has high blood pressure. It's just part of getting older. No, it's not. It shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be. You're not aging. You're choosing to stop living actively. What can you do right now? Stop using age as an excuse. It's not protection. It's a trap. Start listening to your body like a map. Every pain is a sign. Every malfunction, a signal. Get a checkup. Not when you have time. Tomorrow. Write it down. Talk to a doctor. Not the internet. Not your neighbor. A real doctor. This is not a recommendation. This is not advice. This is a survival manual. And if you feel inner resistance right now, that means we've hit the nerve. We don't want you to live in fear. We want to make sure you don't die in silence. Because what comes next is worse. Because what comes next is hearing exactly what people say when they realize everything. But it's too late to change anything. There are things more frightening than pain, more frightening than a diagnosis, even more frightening than loneliness. It's the realization that you knew all along and did nothing. Most people don't die suddenly. They die slowly, piece by piece. Every day, a drop of health, a pinch of dignity, a second of trust from their loved ones. And when the moment comes to say their final words, what echoes in their mind isn't a prayer, but questions with no answers. Why didn't I start sooner? Why did I think this didn't apply to me? Why did I brush it off, while I still had the strength to stand? These are the three words we've been talking about. They don't always sound the same, but their meaning is always the same. I was too late. It's not about money, not about business, not about houses, cars, or vacations. It's about what was lost inside the family, inside the body, inside the soul. Think about how many times you've said to your loved ones, "I don't have time for this right now. Leave me alone, I'm tired. Don't bother me, I'm fine." How many times could you have taken a step forward but chose to pull away? How many times did you feel something was wrong but put it off for later? Now, listen carefully. Later doesn't exist. There is only now, and once now is gone, you're left with emptiness, and in that emptiness, the decay begins, slowly, almost invisibly, but unstoppably. Here's what happens to your body when you choose inaction. Your lung capacity decreases. You don't notice it at first, but then you're struggling just to climb the stairs. Your muscles disappear. You think it's just age. It's not. It's weakness, the kind you allowed. Your brain slows down, and you're no longer sharp, no longer quick, no longer interesting, not to yourself, not to others. But the worst part is the loss of respect. First, for yourself. Then, from those closest to you. Do you think your children are obligated to tolerate your helplessness? Do you think your grandchildren will admire someone who did nothing to take care of themselves? We're not judging you. We're warning you. Because they won't judge later. They'll just drift away. What can you do right now? Throw away the phrase, "It's too late at my age." It's not age. It's an excuse. Start moving. 10 minutes a day, any kind of movement. This isn't fitness. It's an investment in your brain and your dignity. Sit down. Grab a pen. Write this question. What can I do on my own so I'll never become a burden? And do at least one thing from that list, today. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to begin. Let's end this part without sugarcoating it. Life isn't a TV show. You can't hit pause. Time won't wait. And in the next part, you'll hear the words that are spoken most often, but almost no one dares to admit out loud. When a person is dying, they almost never say, "I'm proud of myself." They don't list their achievements. They don't mention their salaries, their home renovations, not even raising their children. In their final minutes, what's heard isn't bravery. It's shame. Most often, 3 simple soul-bearing words. Please forgive me. And it's not a plea to be saved. It's an admission of defeat. A belated cry. I was afraid to live. I didn't know how to be human. I failed. Shame for the coldness, for the indifference, for not hugging when it mattered, for saying too much, or not saying what needed to be said. It's not shame in the face of death. It's shame in the face of a life that lacked courage. In a palliative care room in Ohio, an 81-year-old woman called for her daughter. They hadn't spoken in 12 years, because of words, because of pride, because of hurt. Now she held her daughter's hand and whispered, "I didn't know how to ask for forgiveness. I was afraid of seeming weak." The daughter simply got up and left. Not because she was cruel, but because it was too late. You think you still have time? That you'll get around to it? That later will be easier? No. Later doesn't get easier. Later becomes impossible. And while you stay silent, someone close to you is losing hope. Someone still willing to forgive. Someone still waiting. Not for words, but for action. Your silence is a betrayal. Your indifference is a wound that won't heal. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to care. What can you do right now? Write a letter, a real one, on paper. Don't explain. Just write, "I was wrong. Please forgive me." Make the call, even if you think they won't answer. Call anyway. It matters more than your pride. Say, "I love you," even if you're not used to it, even if you're 70, even if you haven't said it in 30 years. Words don't solve everything, but your inaction does decide whether you'll remain human or not. The final blow of this part is simple and brutal. Old age doesn't kill. Silence does. Resentment does. Fear of admitting you were wrong. That's what kills. Because the ones who die aren't the ones who are old. They're the ones who stopped being human, long before the end. I was afraid. The most common final words, and they're about you. This isn't an exaggeration. This isn't a literary device. It's the bare, raw truth, heard every day by doctors, caregivers, and priests. The most frequent words before death aren't about pain or hope or goodbyes. Just 3 words, spoken quietly, through tears, through burned-out pride. I was afraid to live. Not to die, to live, afraid to start, afraid to change, afraid to be vulnerable, afraid of not being understood, afraid to ask for forgiveness, to speak of love, to accept help, to trust. These are the words of people who lived a life that wasn't truly theirs, people who spent years waiting for the right moment, who chose habit over awareness, silence over conversation, fear over choice. And no one who said these words said them with pride. They said them with shame, with desperation, with pity, for themselves. But by then, it was too late. Too late to talk. Too late to explain. Too late to act. You think this doesn't apply to you? Then ask yourself, who are you right now? Someone who acts, or someone who waits? Waits for their body to break down, for a relationship to fall apart, for their children to turn away from a withdrawn, bitter parent. Who's annoyed by everything? You don't become wiser with age. You become who you choose to be. And if today you choose silence, fear, and excuses, that will be your story. Your life is not a ticket to the finale. It's a responsibility to yourself, to those who still love you, to those who one day may be forced to decide what to do with you, because you didn't decide for yourself while you could. If you change nothing today, you're not just betraying yourself. You're shifting the weight of your weakness onto the shoulders of your children, your grandchildren, and strangers who will see you not as a person, but as a burden. What can you do right now? Admit it. You're afraid. That's not weakness. That's honesty. Stop feeding that fear. Fear is not armor. It's a chain. Find a doctor you trust. Get a full checkup, not for show, but to know where you truly stand. Stop hiding the pain, the exhaustion, the tears. Real strength isn't about enduring. It's about admitting and changing. Remember what you've been putting off. Exercise, reconciliation, a health check. Don't do it tomorrow. Do it now. You don't have to be a hero, but you do have to stop being afraid to live your life honestly. Final words of this part. No compromises. One day you'll be asked, what do you regret? And your answer can be one of pride, or a chillingly honest whisper, I was afraid to live. Choose while you still can.